It all started with a loose cabinet hinge. I was down on one knee, trying to fix it, when my wife looked at me and said she should have married someone rich because nothing ever breaks in their houses. She laughed. I didn't. A few weeks later, her name lit up my phone. Missed call. Then another. And another. But by then, I'd already fixed everything. It started with a screw. One stubborn, stripped screw on the cabinet hinge above the sink. You know, the kind of wobbly door that claps every time you close it, like it's mocking you. I was down on one knee, left elbow braced against the counter, using my old Phillips head, the red-handled one I've had since college. It's chipped on the end and the rubber grip is half melted from an incident involving a stovetop and a bottle of tequila, but it still works. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards upstairs. Eleanor was taking her afternoon bath. That was her new thing lately: rose-scented bath bombs and true crime podcasts. I could hear muffled narration echoing from the bathroom ceiling vent. Something about a missing wife. I remember thinking how ironic that was. I wiped my forehead on my sleeve. The cabinet door hung limp in my hand. I gritted my teeth and gave the screwdriver another twist. The screw wouldn't catch. I could feel it spinning freely, useless in the stripped hole. Typical. I sighed, maybe louder than I meant to, and sat back on my heels. My knees cracked like popcorn. It's not that the repair was complicated. It was the principle. I'd been asking to get this fixed since April, and now it was October. 6 months of Eleanor walking past it like it didn't matter, even though she was the one who complained about it the most. So today I decided, screw it, literally, I'll fix the damn thing myself. That's when I heard her. I didn't even hear her come down the stairs. No creak, no warning. Just her voice, slicing through the air behind me. "Oh," she said. "You're fixing that?" I didn't turn around. Just stayed kneeling, palm on the screwdriver, eyes on the hinge like I was defusing a bomb. "Yeah," I said. Figured it was about time. She stepped into the kitchen, bare feet slapping lightly against the tile. I caught her reflection in the chrome toaster. Towel-wrapped hair, silk robe, one of those green face masks smeared across her cheeks. She looked like a spa ghost. Her eyes, though, sharp as glass. "Honey," she said, dragging out the word like it had weight, "you know you really don't have to do that." I already called someone. I finally turned around. Called someone? Since when? Last week. Remember I said I met Karen's contractor at her barbecue? I told you. She hadn't. But I didn't argue. I just nodded and wiped my hands on the rag. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes on the cabinet like it was beneath her. They already fixed it at their place. Said everything there is solid. Nothing ever breaks. Guess that's what happens when you marry someone with actual money. She laughed, quick, high-pitched, almost musical. Like she didn't realize what she just said. Or maybe she did. And I just stood there, rag in one hand, screwdriver in the other, like a punchline. I smiled. Small, controlled. Guess I'm a little late to the party then. She didn't apologize. Just shrugged and turned back toward the stairs. The silk of her robe swished as she walked away. "Leave it, babe," she said over her shoulder. "You've done enough." And just like that, I was alone again. The cabinet door dangled open like a mouth caught mid-gasp. The stripped screw winked at me from the floor. But I wasn't mad. Not really. I was making a list. I didn't finish the cabinet. After Eleanor went upstairs, I just sat there on the cold tile for a few more minutes, the screwdriver resting on my knee like a relic. Eventually, I stood, stretched my back till it popped, and placed everything back in the drawer beside the sink, the one where all the misfit tools lived. Then I poured myself a drink. Not a strong one. Just a finger of bourbon in a glass with a chipped rim. The chip had been there since last Christmas, when Eleanor's mother knocked it off the counter while explaining how her new husband owned a beach house in Destin. She offered to replace the whole set, said ours looked tired. Eleanor agreed. I kept the glass anyway. Tired things still worked, sometimes better than the shiny ones. I sat by the window and stared out at our backyard. The leaves were turning. Orange, red, the last desperate breath of the season. Eleanor always said autumn was her favorite time of year, but she never wanted to go outside anymore. Said it was too damp, too windy, too allergic. I used to rake the leaves into little piles and pretend I'd burn them later, even though our HOA wouldn't allow it. The smell of firewood and soil reminded me of childhood. My dad fixing the fence with one arm while the other held a cigarette. My mom humming in the kitchen with the window open. That old kind of love, messy, durable. Nothing sleek or cold. Somewhere upstairs, Eleanor turned on the hairdryer. I could hear it, faintly, over the ticking of the kitchen clock. It was the only thing she used the guest bathroom for anymore. Said our master bath had poor acoustics for her podcast recordings. I didn't know she recorded podcasts now. Maybe I'd missed the memo. The bourbon went down easy. Too easy. I sat with the silence a while, trying to remember the last time I felt at home in my own house. It's strange, that moment when you realize you're more comfortable in your garage than your living room. Where the couch is spotless but nobody sits together. Where the walls are painted in statement colors, but no one said anything real in months. It used to be different. I remember when Eleanor and I first moved in. She wore an oversized hoodie and danced barefoot on the hardwood floor, clutching a wine bottle like a microphone. She sang off-key and laughed from her stomach. She still had chipped blue nail polish back then, and she used to steal my flannels. We were in love, I think. I'm not sure when it changed. It wasn't sudden, like a slap. More like erosion. One small comment, then another. One missed dinner, one forgotten joke. A silent night here, an eye roll there. The soft edges got sharp. The warmth turned sterile. But tonight felt different. The way she said it. Guess that's what happens when you marry someone with actual money. It landed like a dart in the center of something I hadn't let myself name. And the worst part? She didn't even blink. I didn't go to bed right away. Stayed up rereading old texts from when we used to flirt like teenagers. Found one where she called me her sturdy oak. I laughed a little. I used to like that image, solid, rooted, dependable. Now I just feel like a tree someone built a house next to, only to complain about the shade. I powered off my phone and stared at the ceiling for a long time. That was the night I started thinking about the hinges in my marriage. The tiny screws we both stopped tightening. The doors that never closed all the way. I knew then I wasn't going to bring it up. Not yet. Instead, I'd start watching. Quietly. Carefully. Because if my wife thought this was just about a cabinet, she hadn't been paying attention. And if she thought I wouldn't remember the way she laughed when she said it, well. Let's just say I've got a good memory for details. Especially the ones that splinter under pressure. The next morning, Eleanor was already gone when I came downstairs. She'd left a note by the coffee pot, written on the back of a store receipt. Went to brunch with Claire. Don't forget to put the trash bins out, hugs and kisses. The hugs and kisses felt like a sticker slapped on a cracked window. Polite. Decorative. Completely detached from the reality behind it. The trash bins were already out. I'd done it the night before, while she was upstairs scrolling through houses on Zillow just for fun. $1 million places with white marble countertops and glass railings. She liked to send me listings sometimes, with little captions like Dream Life or Someday if you win the lottery face blowing a kiss. I didn't reply to those anymore. Not because I didn't want nice things, but because I knew what she really meant. She wasn't dreaming. She was hinting. I made my coffee in silence and sat at the kitchen island, staring at the tile floor beneath my feet. Same floor I installed myself 3 years ago, over the course of 2 long weekends. She'd been supervising, which mostly meant watching TikToks and criticizing my grout lines. She didn't like the way the tiles weren't perfectly aligned. I told her life wasn't a showroom. She told me I didn't have the vision to understand the difference. That was the first time I slept in the guest room. I told myself it was temporary. That she'd had a long day. That I was being too sensitive. That the tiles didn't matter. I remember lying on that lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling fan, and thinking, you're not mad. You're tired. But tired has a way of turning into something else. The next few days passed like always. She worked late. I made dinner and packed up the leftovers she never ate. We shared a house but not a rhythm. Friday night, she came home in a black dress with a slit that climbed all the way to somewhere expensive. Her makeup was sharp. Her perfume filled the kitchen like a stranger. I was in sweatpants, reheating soup. Going out? I asked, more of a habit than a question. She leaned against the counter, pretending to scroll through her phone. Yeah, networking dinner. With Derek's firm. Could be good for my brand. Derek the realtor? She smirked. Derek the millionaire realtor, babe. And there it was again. That weight behind the words. Like every sentence had a needle hidden inside. You didn't mention anything about this earlier. She waved it off. Didn't think it mattered. You never come anyway. I almost said something. I really did. My mouth opened, and I felt the start of a breath. But then I looked at her the way she didn't even glance up from her screen. Like I was just another kitchen appliance. I closed my mouth. Have fun, I said. She kissed the air near my cheek and left. The door clicked shut. Not slammed. Not even pulled hard. Just a soft click. That kind of quiet stays loud in your ears. I sat back down, staring at my soup. The steam had stopped rising. Everything in this house was always cooling off. After a while, I got up and walked into the garage. I didn't turn on the light. Just sat on the little folding chair I kept near my workbench. In the dark. Surrounded by half-finished things. There was a loose wire hanging from the overhead light. I'd been meaning to fix it for months. I stared at it. And I didn't move. The next morning, she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. She wasn't subtle about it. She never is. She dropped her heels by the door like a teenager daring someone to punish her. Her lipstick was gone but her eyes were lined perfectly. I heard her humming as she walked past the kitchen, barefoot, swinging her clutch like it owed her money. "Morning," she said, voice breezy. "Afternoon," I replied, not looking up from the sink. My hands were in dishwater, scrubbing the same plate I'd already washed twice. She poured herself a glass of orange juice. Not a word about where she'd been. Not even the usual fake excuse, sleepover with Claire, drank too much, too tired to drive. Just juice. Just silence. Just another dent in the hood. "You okay?" she asked. I dried the plate. Set it down carefully. "Peachy." She raised an eyebrow. "That's not a real answer." I turned around, leaned against the sink. My shirt was damp from the splashback. "Neither was yours last night." That landed. She blinked, but just once. Then she smiled. That tight, practiced smile I've seen her wear in front of clients and people she secretly hates. "Don't start with me, Atlas." And there it was. The warning. The line in the sand, drawn with a mascara wand. I nodded slowly. Wasn't starting anything. Just making conversation. She rolled her eyes, took her juice, and wandered upstairs like nothing mattered. Like the oxygen between us wasn't thinning out more every day. Later that night, I found myself walking the perimeter of our house. It wasn't something I planned. I just grabbed a flashlight, said I wanted to check the fence, and slipped out into the cold. The air smelled like damp leaves and frost. The kind of smell that reminds you what it's like to be awake. The backyard was still. Too still. The string lights Eleanor had installed last summer were still half working. 2 bulbs flickered like they were dying slow deaths. I checked the gate latch. It was rusted but holding. I walked to the corner where the old planter used to be, the one I built for her first batch of herbs when we moved in. She killed the rosemary in 2 weeks. Said it was too finicky and switched to succulents. Now the planter sat empty, filled with cigarette butts and dried-out receipts. I stood there for a while, flashlight off, hands in my pockets. I wasn't thinking. I was cataloging. Storing details. Every chipped brick. Every rotted board. Every corner of this house was starting to feel like an unfinished goodbye. That night, I laid in bed beside her and listened to her breathe. It was shallow, even. She always slept like the world owed her peace. Meanwhile, I stared at the ceiling fan, counting rotations. Listening for creaks in the drywall. Listening for something real. She turned in her sleep and murmured a name that wasn't mine. Not clearly. Not loud. Just a whisper on the edge of a dream. But I heard it. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The next morning, I shaved carefully, put on my nicest flannel, and packed a small bag in the trunk of my car. Just a few things. Just in case. I wasn't leaving. Not yet. But I'd started thinking about how I'd leave. And more importantly, when. Because the next time something broke in this house, I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to replace it. I started with the bank account. She never checked it. Not the one under my name. Not the small one I opened years ago when I picked up that side job wiring home theaters for the rich people in her networking circle. She thought it was cute. "My little handyman," she'd say, laughing over Prosecco. So I leaned into it. Kept it small. Cashed most payments. Put only enough in the account to make it look modest. She never asked questions. She assumed I didn't have the ambition for more. I let her believe that. That week, I moved most of the balance into a new online account. One with no paper trail, no joint access, and no ties to the house. Then I pulled the deed records just to confirm, yes, my name was still the only one listed. Eleanor always meant to update it, but somehow her schedule never allowed for the paperwork. That was her first mistake. The second was underestimating just how many friends I'd made over the years. The HVAC guy. The electrician. The guy who does the windows in the next subdivision. She never learned their names, never looked them in the eye, never tipped them at Christmas. But I did. I called in a few favors. Nothing big. Just asked questions. Quietly. Ever install security cams without someone knowing? Ever helped a guy change his locks on the sly? Ever hear anything interesting about Derek the realtor and his late-night open houses? Let's just say people love to talk when they've had a beer in your garage and they know you won't rat. It didn't take long before I had a pile of facts. None of them surprised me. What surprised me was how relieved I felt reading them. Like someone finally turned the lights on in a room I thought I'd imagined. Eleanor had been planting seeds. Emotional ones, financial ones, maybe even legal ones. Subtle, deniable stuff. A shared account she claimed was for groceries but never used. A password change on our Wi-Fi she forgot to mention. She started locking her laptop. Taking phone calls in the garage. Deleting texts like it was a nervous tick. Meanwhile, I played dumb. I smiled. I kissed her cheek. I fixed the damn hinge on the cabinet. Then I left the screwdriver out on the counter where she could see it. She barely looked at it. Just said, "Took you long enough." And I said, "Yeah. I guess I wanted to make sure it was done right." She didn't catch it. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, that night, I started drawing up a plan. Not a blueprint of revenge. Not yet. More like an escape route. With options. Option A, leave quietly. Take the car, the money, and the proof. Let her rot in her own mess. Option B, play the long game. Stay sweet. Stay slow. Let her dig deeper. Make sure when she falls, she can't blame the ground. Option C, burn everything to ash, just to see the color of her face when the smoke hits her lungs. I wasn't sure which I wanted more. I wasn't angry. That's the scary part. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't yelling. I was just still. Like water before the dam breaks. That weekend, she invited a few friends over for drinks. I stayed in the garage. They didn't know I was home. I stood behind the side door, barely breathing, and listened through the wall. I didn't catch every word, but I caught enough. He doesn't even try anymore, Eleanor said. I don't want a partner who wears socks with sandals and thinks fixing a cabinet makes him useful. A burst of laughter. I should have married for money, she added. At least rich guys can hire someone to fix their personality. They laughed again. Loud and loose. It was the kind of laughter that left bruises. And all I could think about, standing there with sawdust on my boots, was how calm I felt. She still didn't know. Not really. But soon, she would. The thing about pretending not to notice is that people start to believe you can't. That was Eleanor's final mistake. She thought silence meant surrender. That a man who doesn't raise his voice has nothing sharp inside him. But I was raised on quiet storms. My father used to say, the axe doesn't make a sound until it meets the wood. So I got to work. I moved my tools out of the garage, replaced them with duplicates from a thrift store. Just enough to keep up appearances. The real gear, the expensive stuff, I took to a buddy's storage unit on the other side of town. Same guy who owed me a favor for helping him rewire his boat. He asked no questions, just handed me the key and a beer. Every week, I brought over a few more things. Tools, photos, documents. All while Eleanor was out at yoga or getting brunch or scouting for clients. Her calendar was full of lies dressed in neat font. I took my time. No rushing. No mess. I started collecting evidence, too, not out of spite, but insurance. Photos of her with Derek, laughing too closely on a restaurant patio. Bank records showing purchases in cities she hadn't mentioned visiting. Messages left open just long enough for me to see, then quickly deleted. I learned how to use recovery tools. I learned how to take screenshots without a sound. And I smiled through it all. I kept fixing things around the house. Leaky faucet. Loose doorknob. A cracked tile in the guest bathroom. She mocked me each time. Called me her little house goblin once, right in front of Claire and Derek. I laughed with them. And I tightened the screws just a little harder. Then I called my lawyer. A soft-spoken man named Ravi. Brilliant. Discreet. He met me at a diner off the highway. We sat in a booth while the waitress filled our mugs with burnt coffee, and I laid it all out, everything I'd gathered, everything I planned to do. Ravi barely blinked. He just said, let's draw up the foundation before we start demolition. That's when I found out about the secondary account Eleanor had opened under my name. She'd forged a signature. Transferred just enough funds from our savings to keep it under radar. labeled them as home improvements. Turns out she was planning her own escape. The kicker? The house was still in my name. Solely. And that meant when the dust settled, she'd be standing in a house she didn't own, wrapped in lies she couldn't explain. I updated my will. Removed her from everything. Froze the joint account. Started the paperwork for a private trust. And then I waited. Waited for her to make one final misstep. One that couldn't be unsaid. Unseen. It came on a Wednesday. She left her laptop open while she took a call in the hallway. I walked past her, silent as breath, and glanced at the screen. An email was half-written. Subject, moving timeline plus furniture list. It was addressed to Derek. Once it's all signed, we'll transfer the ownership discreetly. Atlas won't even know until I'm already gone. He's so predictable. I took a picture. Closed the laptop gently. And then I made dinner. She came back into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Kissed my cheek, told me I smelled like rosemary. Funny. She always hated rosemary. I looked at her and smiled, spooning pasta onto her plate. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded, fake and radiant. Perfect. And I just said, good. Let's enjoy it while it lasts. Because tomorrow, I was going to let her trip the wire she'd been walking over for months. And when she fell, I wouldn't even blink. The day she fell apart started like any other. She left the house around 11, said she was heading to the spa with Claire. She wore that long beige coat with the fur collar, the one she always saved for when she needed to look expensive. I helped her with the buttons, like always. Kissed her cheek. Smiled like a man who didn't know he was about to be gutted. But I wasn't gutted. I was ready. The night before, I'd copied everything to a flash drive. The emails, the texts, the fake bank accounts, the photos. I slid it into a plain envelope and tucked it into my coat pocket. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it, only that I wanted to see her read it. I wanted to be there when the illusion cracked. And it did. Oh, did it? I asked her to meet me for coffee that afternoon. I told her I wanted to apologize. That I hadn't been the best version of myself lately. That I'd been thinking about everything, and maybe we both deserved a fresh start. She agreed instantly. Practically chirped into the phone. Said she was so glad I was finally opening up. We met at the little place on the corner with the mint green chairs and the chalkboard menu. She wore lipstick that didn't belong to her mood. She sat down across from me and crossed her legs the way she always did when she was trying to sell something. I handed her the envelope without a word. She looked confused at first. Then opened it, slowly. I watched her eyes move left to right, left to right. Her smile dimmed. Her jaw set. She didn't finish reading. She shoved the papers back inside, stood up, and hissed, "What the hell is this?" I sipped my coffee. "It's everything you've done since March." "You've been spying on me?" "No," I said. "I've been watching." "There's a difference." She looked around like someone might rescue her. Like the barista would hand her an alibi or the old couple at the corner table would shout, "He's lying." But nobody cared. Nobody saw her now. "I can explain." I cut her off with a soft laugh. "I hope so." Because the email to Derek? The fake account? The plan to transfer furniture to a storage unit under his name? Her face went pale. "I sent copies to my lawyer," I said. "Oh, and to your friend Claire." "Just for fun." "You're sick." "No. I'm just awake now." I stood up, pulled my coat on, and looked her square in the eyes for the first time in months. "The house isn't yours. The money's frozen. The accounts are locked. The paperwork is filed. You'll be served next week. You can't do this." I already did. And then I walked out. No slamming doors. No yelling. Just the soft bell over the cafe entrance and the wind against my collar. The next few days were chaos, but not for me. She tried calling. Dozens of times. I didn't answer. She showed up at the house once, banging on the front door with her palm. I watched her from inside, through the curtains, holding Banjo, my dog, my recliner buddy, who liked her less and less lately. I didn't open the door. Eventually, the text shifted from threats to sobs to silence. And finally, I could breathe. The lawyer handled the rest. I kept the house. Kept the savings. She signed the agreement in exchange for not going public with the more humiliating details. I didn't want to ruin her. I just wanted her gone. That was 6 months ago. Now, the cabinet hinge works perfectly. The floors are scratched from Banjo's claws, but I don't mind. I painted the walls. Rearranged the furniture. Took back the rooms. And I still keep that screwdriver, the red-handled one, in a drawer by the kitchen. Every time I open it, I remember her saying, "You've done enough." And she was right. I had done enough. Now I fix things that stay fixed. And when something's too broken, I don't patch it. I replace it with something better.